The small wolf cub shivered in the cold rain. His gray fur was wet and muddy. The acid drops burned his skin. He was alone now. The big metal door had closed behind him, and no one was coming back. Day was the runt of his litter. Too small, too weak, not what the Vargos Corporation wanted. They had made him in their lab, mixing genes to create the perfect guard animal for their mining operations on Caribus 7. But Day was a mistake. Discard Unit 12D. The tall man in the white coat had said, "It's too small." The genetic sequence didn't take right. So they threw him out into the wasteland. The sky here was always dark with thick clouds. The ground was covered in black rocks and purple moss that gave off a strange smell. Nothing much lived out here except for small crawling things that hid under rocks. Day crawled under a large piece of scrap metal as the rain got worse. His stomach hurt from hunger. He had never been outside the lab before. In there, food came regularly. Out here, there was nothing. The cub's eyes glowed a soft blue in the darkness. This was another reason they had thrown him away. Normal Vargo wolves had yellow eyes. Blue was wrong. Different. Bad. A loud noise made Dad press himself further under the metal. A large vehicle rolled by, its wheels crushing rocks and moss. It stopped not far from his hiding place. Two humans in protective suits stepped out. "I hate patrol duty," said one. "Nothing ever happens out here." "Better than working the mines," said the other. "At least we get to see the sky, even if it's ugly." They walked around for a while, then got back in their vehicle and left. Dai waited until he couldn't hear the engine anymore. Then he crept out from his shelter. He needed food. His enhanced nose could smell something edible not far away. Following the scent, he found the remains of something the humans had left behind. It wasn't much, but he ate it all. Night came, though it was hard to tell on Caribus 7. The darkness just got deeper. The temperature dropped further. Day found a hole under some rocks and crawled inside. It was warmer there, and dry. As he curled up, memories flashed in his mind. The lab, the tests, the other wolf cubs growing bigger while he stayed small, the disappointment in the scientist's eyes. One of them had wanted to keep him, to study why he was different, but the others said no. Not worth the resources. Day didn't understand all the words, but he felt their meaning. Failure, waste, discard. Sleep came in fits and starts. Dad dreamed of warm hands and food. He dreamed of the other cubs, how they played together before they were separated for training. In his dreams, he was big and strong like them. Morning brought no relief. The rain had stopped, but the air was thick with fog that burned Day's lungs. He needed better shelter. This part of the wasteland was too exposed. In the distance, he could see the lights of the mining facility where he was born. Beyond that was another set of lights. Smaller, scattered. The human settlement. Da had heard the lab workers talk about it. Those stubborn colonists, they had said, still trying to make a life on this rock. Day didn't know what waited for him there, but staying here meant certain death. His body was different from normal wolves in another way. He could think more clearly. Plan. Understand. This was a defect too, according to the scientists. A wolf that thinks too much might not obey. With one last look at the facility that had created him, then thrown him away, Day turned toward the distant lights of the human settlement. His legs were weak and his stomach empty, but something inside him refused to die here. One step, then another. The small wolf with the wrong-colored eyes began his journey across the wasteland. G pulled her environment suit tighter around her body. The suit was too big. It had belonged to her older brother before he left for Earth. The helmet visor was scratched, making it hard to see clearly. Still, she was glad to be outside the settlement walls. 1 hour, G. No longer, her father had warned. And stay within sight of the perimeter lights. Jai had nodded, but she had no plans to follow those rules. The interesting things were always beyond the lights. 17 years on this planet, and her parents still treated her like a child. She checked her oxygen meter. Still plenty left. Then she walked past the last perimeter light and into the wasteland. The ground crunched under her boots. Purple moss glowed softly in the dim light, making patterns on the rocky ground. Jay collected samples as she walked. Moss for her father's research, interesting rocks for her own collection. A piece of strange metal that might be useful for trading. The settlement needed all the resources they could find. A sound made her stop. Something like a whimper. Jay turned slowly, scanning the area. There, a movement under a fallen piece of mining equipment. Something small, probably just a scavenger rat. But the whimper came again. It didn't sound like a rat. Jay approached slowly. "Hello," she called softly, feeling silly for talking to wildlife. Two blue lights glowed in the darkness beneath the metal. Eyes, she realized. But no animal on Caribus 7 had eyes that color. Jay knelt down, keeping a safe distance. "Are you hurt?" she asked. The creature crawled forward a little. Jay gasped. It looked like a wolf cub, but not like any wolf she had seen in books or videos about Earth. This one had strange markings along its sides that seemed to glow faintly. Its fur was a mix of gray and silver with black streaks. Jay knew she should leave it alone. Her father always warned about alien wildlife. But the cub looked weak. It was shaking. Its ribs showed through its thin fur. "You're starving," Jay said. She reached into her pack and pulled out a protein bar. She broke off a small piece and tossed it toward the cub. The creature sniffed the food but didn't eat it. "It's okay," Jay said. "It's food." As if understanding her words, the cub took the piece and ate it quickly. Then it looked at her with those strange blue eyes, as if asking for more. Jay broke off another piece. This time, the cub came closer to take it from her hand. Jay noticed cuts on its paws and a burn mark on its side. "Someone hurt you," she said quietly. "Or something." The cub finished eating and stared at her. Jay had never seen such intelligence in an animal's eyes before. A distant rumble made them both look up. A company transport was approaching. If they found her with an alien animal, there would be trouble. The company took all specimens for their research. "I can't leave you here," Jai decided. "They'll find you." Moving slowly, she opened her pack wider. "Can you fit in here? I'll take you somewhere safe." To her surprise, the cub seemed to understand. After a moment's hesitation, it climbed into her pack, curling up small. Jay closed the pack partway, leaving room for air, and stood up. The added weight was noticeable, but not too heavy. She turned back toward the settlement, walking quickly but carefully. Getting past the perimeter guards would be tricky, but Jay knew a weak spot in the fence behind the water recycling plant. She had used it many times for her explorations. "I'm Jay," she said quietly to her pack as she walked. "I don't know what you are, but you're coming home with me. At least until you're better." The cub made no sound. Jay could feel it trembling against her back. As the settlement came into view, Jay's mind raced. Where would she hide the creature? How would she feed it? What would her parents say if they found out? She didn't have answers, but she knew one thing. This strange wolf with the glowing blue eyes needed help. And on Caribus 7, where everything was harsh and survival was never guaranteed, helping each other was the only way to live. 3 days had passed since Jay brought the strange wolf cub home. She had made a bed for him in the storage space under her floor panels. It was small, but it was warm and safe. "I think I'll call you Da," Jay said as she changed the bandages on his burned side. "It means great in the old language. My grandmother taught me that word." The cub's blue eyes watched her carefully. Jay had noticed that he seemed to pay close attention whenever she spoke. It was almost like he understood her words. "You need to stay quiet when my parents are home," she reminded him. They wouldn't understand. Jai had been sneaking food from the family meals. Her mother, Sun, had noticed the missing food, but thought Jai was just eating more. "Growing girls need food," Sun had said with a smile. "But don't take too much. Food rations are tight this month." Jai felt bad about lying, but she couldn't let Da go back to the wasteland. He was getting stronger each day, but he was still too weak to survive alone. Today, Jai had brought him a special treat, a small piece of real meat. Such food was rare in the settlement. "Here," she said, placing it in front of Da. "You'll like this." Day sniffed the meat, then looked up at Jai. To her surprise, he pushed the meat toward her with his nose. "No, it's for you," Ji said. Day nudged it again, his eyes never leaving her face. "Are you sharing with me?" Ji asked in wonder. Day made a soft sound, almost like a yes. Ji broke the meat in half and took a small bite of her piece. "Thank you," she said. Day ate his half, then sat back on his haunches, watching her. Ji reached out slowly and stroked his head. His fur felt softer now that it was clean. "You're not like any animal I've ever heard of," Jai whispered. Suddenly, the door to Ji's room slid open. Her father, Ta, stood there. "Ji, who are you talking to?" he asked, stepping into the room. Ji jumped up, trying to block his view of the floor. "No one, Dad. Just myself." Ta looked at her with concern. "I heard you every night this week. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Ji said quickly. But Da had heard the new voice. Curious, he poked his head out from the floor panel that Jai had left slightly open. Tae's eyes widened in shock. "What is that?" he shouted, backing toward the door. "Dad, please don't be afraid," Jai begged. "This is Da. I found him in the wasteland. He was hurt and dying." "That's one of those lab animals from the mining company," Ta said. "Jai, those are dangerous." Da, sensing the fear, backed away under the floor again. But instead of growling or showing fear himself, he made a soft whining sound and lowered his head in a gesture of peace. "See, he's not dangerous," Jai insisted. "He's smart, Dad. Really smart. I think he understands us." Ta looked doubtful, but he stopped backing away. "Your mother will not be happy about this." As if on cue, Sun appeared in the doorway. "Not happy about what?" she asked. Then she saw the small wolf peering out from under the floor. "What in the stars is that?" "Mom, please," Ji said, stepping between her parents and Da. "He needs our help." "It's a wild animal, Ji," Sun said firmly. "It needs to go back where it came from." "He'll die out there," Jai argued. "The company threw him away because he was too small. Look at the burn marks on his side. They hurt him." Sun and Tai exchanged looks. They both knew how the mining company treated all life as disposable. "Let me show you something," Ji said. She turned to Da. "Da, can you come out?" "It's okay." To everyone's surprise, Dag crawled out slowly and sat at Ji's feet, his blue eyes moving between the three humans. "Da, how many people are in this room?" Ji asked. Day pawed the ground 3 times. Sun gasped. "Did it just count?" Ji corrected. "His name is Da. And yes, he understands us." 2 weeks had passed since Ji's parents discovered Da. To Ji's surprise, they had agreed to let her keep him. Sun had even grown fond of the strange wolf, giving him scraps from the kitchen and petting his head when she thought no one was looking. "He's smarter than most people I know," Ta had admitted after watching Dai solve a puzzle box that Jai had made for him. Life had settled into a new normal. Day stayed inside their small home, hidden from the other settlers. Ji taught him new words and commands each day, amazed at how quickly he learned. But their peaceful days were about to end. The alarm sounded throughout the settlement, making Day's ears perk up. Jai ran to the window. Outside, people were gathering in the center square. "Something's wrong," Sun said, pulling on her jacket. "We need to go see." "What about Da?" Ji asked. "He stays here," Ta said firmly. "Lock the door." Jai knelt beside Da. "Stay quiet," she whispered. "We'll be back soon." Day made a soft sound of understanding and retreated to his hiding place under Ji's floor panels. Outside, the settlement's leader, an older man named Gil, stood on a platform. Behind him were 4 people in Vargos Corporation uniforms. "Everyone, please calm down," Jill was saying. "Director Rim from Vargos has an announcement." A tall woman in a crisp black uniform stepped forward. Her face was hard, with no smile. "Settlers of Zone 12, she said in a cold voice. "Vargos Corporation has expanded its mining rights on Caribus 7. This area is now designated for immediate extraction." Angry voices rose from the crowd. Ta pushed forward. "What does that mean for us?" he demanded. Director Rim's eyes narrowed. "It means you have 30 days to relocate to the new settlement area we have prepared." "The new area is a barren rock field," someone shouted. "Nothing grows there." "That is not Vargos Corporation's concern," Rim replied. "Your contracts clearly state that you settle here at the company's discretion." Sun grabbed Ta's arm. "We can't move," she whispered. "We've spent 5 years making our soil patches grow. We'll starve in the new area." Ta nodded grimly. "She knows that." More angry shouts filled the air. Rim signaled, and her security guards moved forward, hands on their weapons. "This is not a negotiation," Rim said. 30 days. Then we start drilling with or without you gone." Gil tried to calm the crowd. "Please, everyone. We need to discuss this as a community. Let's not do anything rash." But the settlers were too angry. Some pushed toward the Vargos officials. The guards drew their shock batons. "Stop," Jill pleaded, but it was too late. One guard swung his baton at a settler who had gotten too close. The man fell, crying out in pain. More guards moved in. She found herself pushed to the front of the crowd. A guard turned toward her, baton raised. "Stay back, girl," he warned. "Leave us alone," she shouted, fear making her brave. "This is our home." The guard stepped closer. "I said, stay back." Everything happened very fast after that. The guard lunged forward. G fell backward. The baton came down. But it never hit her. A gray blur shot past the people in the crowd. Dad leaped through the air and landed between G and the guard. His blue eyes glowed brightly, and his fur stood on end. A deep growl came from his throat. The guard stumbled back in shock. "What the—" "A wolf," someone in the crowd gasped. Director Rim pushed her way forward, staring at Dad with wide eyes. Then her surprise turned to cold interest. "Well," she said slowly, "Unit 12D. So that's where you went." Day's growl grew louder. He backed up until he was touching G, never taking his eyes off the Vargos people. "You know this animal?" Gil asked, confused. "It's Vargos property," Rim said. "A failed experiment from our security animal program." She pulled out a small device from her pocket. "And now we'll take it back." "He's not your property," G shouted, putting her arms around Day's neck. "You threw him away to die." Director Rim's face showed no emotion. The unit was discarded due to defects. However, it remains Vargos intellectual property. She nodded to her guards. "Take it." 2 guards moved forward with capture poles. Day growled louder, his blue eyes glowing brighter with fear and anger. Ty pushed through the crowd to stand by his daughter. "You can't just take him," he said. "He's part of our family now. Interfering with company property is a violation of your settlement contract," Rim said coldly. "You could lose all your rights to remain on Caribus 7. The crowd grew quiet. Everyone knew how powerful Vargos was. They controlled everything on this planet. The air filters, the water supply, the food imports. Just as the guards were about to reach Da, a voice called out from the back of the crowd. "Wait." A man pushed his way forward. He wore the faded uniform of a Vargos worker, but the patches had been removed. "There might be another way." Director Rim frowned. "Hoon, I thought you left the planet after you quit." The man called Hoon shrugged. "Turns out space travel is expensive." He looked at Da with interest. "So this is the special project I heard about. The one with the enhanced brain capacity. Ex-employees should not discuss company matters," Rim said sharply. Hoon ignored her and knelt to look at Da. Blue eyes. That's from the neural enhancement gene splicing, isn't it? The one that was supposed to make them understand complex commands. Rim's eyes narrowed. That information is classified. I was on the engineering team before I quit. Hoon reminded her. He looked at G and her family. You need to get him away from here. Now. We have nowhere to go, Sun said. Hoon stood up. I have a friend with a supply shuttle. It leaves for Nova Sul in 1 hour. He looked at Rim. The biggest settlement on the planet, where Vargos has less control. You're interfering with company business, Rim warned. I'll have you arrested. On what charge? Hoon asked. I'm just talking to fellow settlers. He lowered his voice to speak to Ta. Meet me at the south airlock in 20 minutes. Bring only what you can carry. Rim signaled to her guards. Take the wolf now. The guards rushed forward with their capture poles. But Day was ready. He ducked under one pole and jumped over another. The crowd, now firmly on Day's side, moved to block the guards. Run, someone shouted. Je pulled Day away from the square as people pressed in around the Vargos team, slowing them down. Tai and Sun followed close behind. We have to pack, Sun said as they reached their home. Only what's important, Tai reminded her. Food, water packs, and warm clothes. Jai ran to her room and grabbed her backpack. She put in her journal, a photo of her family, and a small box of treasures. Then she looked at Dad, who was watching her with worried eyes. It's going to be okay, she told him, though she wasn't sure if that was true. 20 minutes later, they met Hoon at the south airlock. He was waiting with a small cart. Hurry, he said. Rim has called for backup. They'll lock down the settlement soon. Why are you helping us? Ta asked as they climbed onto the cart. Hoon started the engine. I worked for Vargos for 15 years. I saw how they treat people, and other living things, like tools to be used and thrown away. He glanced at Da. When I saw what they were doing with the wolf program, I quit. The cart sped through the rocky terrain toward a small landing pad in the distance. A shuttle sat there, its engines already running. That's our ride, Hoon said. My friend won't wait if we're late. Behind them, alarms began to sound from the settlement. Lights flashed, and announcements blared about unauthorized departures. What will happen in Nova Sul? G asked, holding Da tightly. I don't know, Hoon admitted, but there's a chance there. Here, there's none. The shuttle grew larger as they approached. She looked down at Da, who was looking back at her with trust in his blue eyes. We'll stay together, she promised him, no matter what happens next. Nova Sul was nothing like the small settlement G's family had left behind. Tall buildings rose into the sky, their lights pushing back against the constant darkness of Caribus 7. Streets filled with people, shops, and food stands made G's head spin after years of quiet life. Stay close, Ta warned, as they followed Hoon through the crowded streets. It's easy to get lost here. Day stayed by G's side, pressing against her leg. The noise and smells seemed to bother him too. His blue eyes darted around, taking in everything. Hoon led them to a small apartment in a building near the edge of the city. You can stay here for now, he said. It's not much, but it's safe. What happens next? Sun asked, setting down their few bags. Hoon looked at Dad with worried eyes. Vargos will be looking for you. All of you, but especially him. He knelt down to look Da in the eyes. They put a lot of money into making you. They won't give up easily. Then we'll keep hiding, G said firmly. Hoon shook his head. Hiding won't work forever. You need protection, which means you need money and influence. He stood up. There might be a way, but it's not easy. What way? Tai asked. The arena, Hoon said. It's where engineered creatures fight. If Dag could win there, he could earn his freedom under planetary law. Fighting. G's face paled. No, he could get hurt. He will get hurt if Vargos finds him, Hoon said quietly. At least this way, he has a chance. Later that night, after her parents were asleep, Jay sat by the window with Da. The lights of Nova Sul spread out below them like stars. "I won't let them make you fight," she whispered, stroking his fur. Day looked up at her, then out at the city. He made a soft sound, almost like a sigh. A knock at the door made them both jump. Hoon entered with a stranger, a short, muscular woman with gray hair cut close to her head. "This is Ju," Hoon said. "She trains fighters for the arena." Ju walked straight to Da and knelt in front of him. "So this is the wolf everyone's talking about, the one that stood up to Vargos guards." She held out her hand. To Ji's surprise, Dai sniffed Ju's hand, then allowed her to touch his head. "Smart," Ju commented. "You can see it in his eyes." She looked at Jai. "Has he chosen you as his person?" Jai nodded. "We take care of each other." "Good. That bond will be important." Ju stood up. "Hoon told me what happened. Fighting in the arena is your best option." "I won't let him get hurt," Jai insisted. "All fighters get hurt," Ju said bluntly. "But I can teach him to survive, to win." "Why would you help us?" Ji asked. "I hate Vargos," Ju said simply. "They took my home years ago, just like they're taking yours now." And she looked at Dai again. "I've never seen anything like him before. He deserves better than being the company's property." The next day, training began. Ju took them to an old warehouse. Inside was open space with various objects and obstacles. "First, we need to see what he can do," Ju said. She set up a simple course. "Can he follow commands?" Jay nodded. "Da, jump over the box, then run to the red circle." Day did exactly as she asked. Ju watched with interest. "Now, more complex," Ju said. "Tell him to jump over the box, push the ball, and then bring back the small cloth." Jai relayed the commands. Da completed each task perfectly. "Remarkable," Ju murmured. The rumors about Vargos making smarter security animals were true. For hours, Ju tested Day's abilities. He could remember patterns, solve simple problems, and even recognize shapes and colors. "He's not just smart," Ju said finally. "He thinks. That's rare, even for engineered animals." "So he can win?" Ji asked hopefully. "Most arena fighters rely on size and strength," Ju explained. "Dai is small, but he has something better. He has a mind." She smiled at the wolf. "We'll train him to use that, to outsmart his opponents rather than overpower them." Day looked from Ju to Ji, his blue eyes bright with understanding. "The first fight is in 2 weeks," Ju said. "That's not much time, but it's all we have." Jai knelt beside Da. "Are you sure about this?" she asked him. Da pressed his head against her hand. Then he turned to Ju and stood tall, as if ready to begin. Training had started. The road to freedom had begun. The arena was a large round building in the center of Nova Sul. Bright lights shone on its walls, and a huge crowd pushed to get inside. Jai had never seen so many people in one place. "Stay close," Ju told Ji and her family. "The arena can be dangerous, even for viewers." They followed Ju through a side door marked Fighters Only. Inside was a long hall with small rooms on each side. Strange sounds came from these rooms. Growls, roars, and things Jay couldn't name. "Those are the other fighters," Hoon explained when he saw Ju's worried face. "All engineered creatures like Da." They entered a small room at the end of the hall. Day followed calmly, but his ears were up, listening to everything. "Put this on him," Ju said, handing Jai a thin metal collar. "What is it?" Ji asked, turning it over in her hands. Hoon stepped forward. "I made it. It's a voice translator. I programmed it using the brain scan patterns we recorded during training." Jai carefully placed the collar around Day's neck. It fit perfectly. "Will it hurt him?" Sun asked. "No," Hoon said. "It just reads his thoughts and turns them into words, simple words only." "Why does he need it?" Tai asked. Because the crowd needs to see he's different, Ju explained. They need to hear him think. A loud buzzer sounded, making them all jump. It's time, Ju said. The first match is starting. Da is third on the list. Jai knelt beside Da. His fur was clean and brushed. He looked stronger after 2 weeks of good food and training. But he was still small compared to the sounds Jai had heard from the other rooms. You don't have to do this, she whispered. Da's blue eyes met hers. The collar around his neck lit up. Safe, Jay, came a strange, flat voice from the collar. Jay gasped. Did you just talk? Not really, Hoon explained. The collar is converting his thoughts to the closest matching words. Safe, G. The collar repeated. Fight, free. Jai hugged Da tightly. Be careful, she whispered. When it was time for Da's fight, Ju led him to the entrance of the arena. Ji and her family took seats near the front where Da could see them. The arena was a large circle of sand with high walls around it. Thousands of people sat watching, most of them betting on the fights. Next match, a loud voice announced. Crusher versus new challenger Ghost Wolf. The crowd cheered as a large door opened on one side of the arena. A huge creature that looked like a mix between a bear and a lizard stepped out. It had thick scales and long claws. It roared, showing rows of sharp teeth. That's Crusher, someone behind G said. He's won his last 5 matches, killed 3 fighters. G felt sick. Da can't fight that, she whispered to her mother. A smaller door opened on the other side of the arena. Dai walked out calmly, his blue eyes glowing in the bright lights. The crowd laughed when they saw him. That tiny thing, someone shouted. It won't last 1 minute. Crusher charged across the sand toward Da, but Day didn't run. He stood still, watching the larger creature come closer. At the last second, Dai stepped to the side. Crusher missed him completely and crashed into the wall. The crowd grew quiet, surprised. Crusher turned, angry now. He charged again. Again, Dai moved at the perfect moment. He's too small and fast, Ju said with a smile. Just like we planned. For 10 minutes, Dai avoided every attack. Crusher grew tired, his movements slower. The crowd stopped laughing and started watching with interest. Then Dai did something unexpected. Instead of running away, he charged straight at Crusher. But instead of attacking, he ran between the bigger creature's legs and jumped up to touch a spot on Crusher's neck. Crusher froze, then fell to the sand, unable to move. The nerve point, Ju gasped. He found it. I only showed him once in training. The crowd was silent for a moment, then exploded in cheers. The announcer's voice boomed. Winner, Ghost Wolf. Day stood in the center of the arena. His collar lit up, and the strange flat voice carried throughout the arena. Not property. Person. The crowd fell silent again. Then someone started chanting, Ghost Wolf, Ghost Wolf. Others joined in, the chant growing louder. Jai hugged her parents, tears in her eyes. He did it, she whispered. He won. Day looked up at her in the stands, his blue eyes bright with pride. This was just the beginning. 3 months had passed since Da's first fight. Now he was the most famous fighter in the arena. People came from all parts of Caribus 7 to see the small wolf with blue eyes who outsmarted creatures 3 times his size. Ghost Wolf fights tonight. The signs all over Nova Sul announced. 10 wins, no losses. In their apartment, which was much nicer now thanks to Da's winnings, she watched as Hoon adjusted Da's translator collar. I've made it better, Hoon said. He should be able to say more complex things now. Day sat patiently as Hoon worked. He was different now, more confident, stronger. But he still followed Jai everywhere when he wasn't training or fighting. Thank you, Da's collar said in its flat voice. Hoon smiled. You're welcome, friend. Tai entered the room, his face serious. We have a problem, he said. Vargo's people are in the city, looking for Da. Ji's heart sank. She had hoped they were safe now. How do you know? Sun asked. Gil told me, Ta said. He arrived yesterday from our old settlement. He said Director Rim has been asking questions all over the planet. Hoon frowned. They must have heard about Ghost Wolf. The fights are broadcast everywhere now. What will we do? Ji asked, putting her arm around Da's neck. Hoon's eyes lit up suddenly. Maybe this is good timing, he said. I found something yesterday. Something about Da. He pulled out a small data pad. I still have friends at Vargo's who can access files. Look at this. They gathered around the pad. On the screen was a document marked classified with the Vargo's logo. What is it? Tai asked. Da's creation files, Hoon explained. The genetic template they used to make him. He pointed to a section highlighted in red. See this part? It says, human DNA sequence 117B incorporated for enhanced neural pathways. What does that mean? Ji asked. It means, Hoon said slowly, that Da isn't just a wolf. He's part human. The room fell silent. Da looked at each person, his blue eyes thoughtful. Is that even legal? Sun finally asked. Hoon shook his head. No, it's completely illegal. It breaks the genetic mixing laws from Earth. Vargos could lose their license to operate on this planet. No wonder they want him back so badly, Ta said. He's evidence of their crime. Da's collar lit up. Human, like Jai. Jai hugged him. You're you, Da. That's what matters. Hoon was typing rapidly on his pad. This changes everything. Under law, a creature with human DNA has rights. Not full human rights, but enough that Vargos can't claim you as property. Can we prove it? Tai asked. With this document, yes, Hoon said. But we need to make it public in a way that Vargos can't ignore or cover up. The championship fight, Ju said from the doorway. They hadn't heard her come in. It's tomorrow night. Everyone will be watching. Even the planetary governor. Jai looked at Da. Are you ready for the championship? Your opponent will be the toughest yet. Da's collar glowed. Ready. Fight. For freedom. The next day, news spread that Director Rim had arrived in Nova Sol with a team of Vargos security. They were seen near the arena, talking to officials. They're trying to stop the fight, Ju told them. Or worse, they might try to take Da during it. We need a plan, Ta said. Hoon held up his datapad. I sent copies of this document to trusted people. If anything happens to us, it still gets out. As evening came, they made their way to the arena. The streets were packed with people heading to see the championship fight. Ghost Wolf versus Iron Claw. The signs flashed everywhere. At the fighter's entrance, they were stopped by arena security. Only the fighter and trainer allowed past this point, the guard said. Jai looked worried, but I always go with him. Ju stepped forward. It's okay, Jai. I'll take care of him. Day touched Ji's hand with his nose. His collar lit up. See, you, after win. Jai knelt and hugged him tightly. Be careful, she whispered. Iron Claw is dangerous. As Dai and Ju disappeared through the door, Hoon guided Ji and her parents to their seats. The arena was completely full. On a special platform sat the planetary governor and other officials. And there, speaking to the governor, was Director Rim. She's trying to convince them to stop the fight, Hoon said. We need to act fast. He handed Ji the datapad. When I give the signal, press this button. It will show Da's file on every screen in the arena. The lights dimmed. The championship fight was about to begin. The crowd roared as the two fighters entered the arena. Iron Claw was massive. A bear-like creature with metal grafted onto its front paws, making its claws shine under the lights. It stood on its back legs, nearly 3 times Day's height. Day walked calmly to his position, his blue eyes fixed on his opponent. He looked small, but those who had seen him fight before knew size wasn't everything. In the stands, she clutched the data pad Hoon had given her. Director Rim was still talking to the governor, pointing toward the arena. Not yet, Hoon whispered to Jay. Wait for the right moment. The fight began. Iron Claw charged across the sand, faster than something so large should move. Day darted to the side, but this time, Iron Claw was ready. It changed direction quickly, one metal claw swinging toward Da. Day wasn't fast enough. The claw caught his side, leaving a long cut. Red blood stained his gray fur. Jay gasped. In 10 fights, no one had managed to hurt Da before. Iron Claw pressed its advantage, not giving Da time to recover. Again and again, it came close to catching him. Da was tiring. The cut on his side slowed him down. He can't win this one. Someone behind G said. Ghost Wolf has met his match. Day retreated to the far side of the arena, gathering his strength. Iron Claw followed more slowly now, as if it knew victory was close. In the special box, Director Rim was smiling. She signaled to her security team at the arena exits. They're going to take him when the fight ends, Ta said, noticing the Vargos guards. Now, Hoon said to Ji, press the button. Ji's finger pressed down. For a moment, nothing happened. Then every screen in the arena changed. The fight disappeared, replaced by the Vargos document showing Da's creation. A confused murmur ran through the crowd as people tried to understand what they were seeing. Hoon stood up. People of Caribus 7, he shouted. The fighter known as Ghost Wolf was created illegally by Vargos Corporation. They mixed human DNA with wolf genes. Under law, he cannot be property. The crowd's murmur grew louder. The governor looked at the screens, then at Director Rim, whose face had gone pale. In the arena, Iron Claw had stopped its attack, confused by the commotion. Da used this moment to catch his breath. His blue eyes scanned the crowd until he found G. What is the meaning of this? The governor demanded, his voice carrying through the arena speakers. Governor, Director Rim said quickly, these are stolen classified documents. This is a company matter. Human DNA in an engineered fighting animal is not a company matter, the governor interrupted. It's a violation of planetary law. In the arena, the fight had resumed. Iron Claw charged at Da again, but something had changed. Da no longer looked tired. His eyes glowed brighter than ever. As Iron Claw swung its deadly claws, Da did something no one expected. Instead of running away, he ran toward his opponent. He ducked under the massive paws and leaped up, landing on Iron Claw's back. The larger creature roared, trying to shake him off. But Da held on. He studied Iron Claw's movements during their fight, and had noticed something no one else had. A small gap in the metal plating at the base of the neck. With perfect precision, Da struck that spot with his teeth. Iron Claw froze, then collapsed to the ground. The arena fell silent, then erupted in the loudest cheer yet. Ghost Wolf! Ghost Wolf! The crowd chanted. Da stood in the center of the arena, bleeding but victorious. His collar glowed. Not Ghost Wolf, the synthetic voice said. Da. Person. Free. The governor stood up. Under the witness of all present, I recognize this fighter's sentient status. Vargos Corporation's claim of ownership is hereby rejected. Director Rim's face twisted with anger, but there was nothing she could do. The evidence was clear. The crowd was on Da's side. Even her own security team looked uncertain. Jai ran down to the arena entrance as the gates opened. Da limped toward her, his eyes never leaving her face. You did it, Jay said, tears running down her cheeks as she hugged him. You're free. Da's collar glowed once more. We free, he corrected. Family free. 1 year later, Da stood before the Planetary Council. He wore no collar now. Hoon had created a better device that translated his thoughts more clearly. At his side was G, now a student at Nova Souls University, studying rights for engineered beings. The small wolf that had once been thrown away as defective was now a champion for all like him. The discarded had become the defender. And it all began with one human girl who saw not a monster, but a friend who needed saving.